you even go back like 5 years and Axdome and Carbon and Canopy were like barely even existed, basically. Like no one was really using them in terms of small and mid-sized firms. And I don't know for you, but for me, the first time I wrote a big check for practice management software, I was like, oh man, what am I doing? Like
Yeah.
this better pay off. This is seriously expensive. And now I can't even imagine doing the business without it. It's like, okay, well, that's the easiest check. It's still a big check, but it's an easier
Yeah.
check for me to write. That's
Yeah,
right.
because the
That's right.
value's out there and they are
Yeah.
improving it. And, a lot of them, they are taking the user suggestions. And that's why it's such a great time because we're finally getting what we always envisioned for all of this
Yeah.
stuff. And it's great. And they are listening to, us as the accountants, bookkeepers, CPAs. They're listening to us and improving the products. Or even like yourself, you have people who left the industry to create these softwares because they knew there was a problem and they knew
Yeah.
there was a better way to do it.
Really appreciate you taking the time. Why don't you start out with your background, kind of how you got into the industry and just tell us a little more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So, Paul Whelan, and I got into the industry. It's been about 10 years now. After I got my accounting degree, and I really always loved everything in accounting. So, my first job, kind of out of college, I worked at a financial planning firm. They also had a tax arm, and I primarily did that. I always wanted to gear more towards the tax industry, and especially work towards small businesses. I had a brief stint working for some of the software companies in the industry as well. And then I really got my start. I started working for a local firm in the area, and they worked with all small business clients, which was just great and really got me passionate about it because you could work with actual local people and actually help them and provide guidance and advice versus working in a very large tax department or even working for the big four accounting firms and just working on one tiny piece of the puzzle. And I always knew that I wanted to be a firm owner one day. And I was on pace to buy out the company that I worked for at the time. And what we kind of worked on with me and the owner was a partial buyout. And that's when I started my own practice, which was 2 years ago last month. And I couldn't be happier. I think it's such a great time and an exciting time to be in accounting and tax and working with small business clients.
Perfect. And yeah, tell me a little bit more about that practice focus. You mentioned small businesses, but tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of my clients, they're local people. I do work with a lot of tradesmen, a lot of people in construction, professional services as well. For me in particular, most of my clients, they're probably under about $5 million in revenue. I kind of focus on that sweet spot. And most of my clients, I mean, a lot of their needs are what most people's needs are, cash flow, budgeting, making sure that they got enough cash to pay their payroll, looking for expansion, loan requests, financing. But for the most part, they're all local people, your mom and pop shops that would be in your local town, in your local area that you live in.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you do tax or bookkeeping, CAS? Like, kind of how would you describe your kind of services that you focus on?
Yeah, so I do almost everything under the sun. But right now, I primarily focus on tax because that was where my background was from. When I started my firm, I worked for a small firm and it was primarily a tax shop. But with that, I'm trying to expand more towards the advisory services. I do have some bookkeeping that I do for my clients as well. And my sweet spot would kind of be doing everything for all my clients. So if I do their bookkeeping and I do their quarterly planning and I do their tax return, they have one point person that they can go to with everything. But all of my clients, I do a tax return for all of them. Primarily business owners, small business owners. There are some individual clients that I do as well. They primarily need tax planning services, not just your basic tax returns.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and talk a little bit about why, why do the breadth of services for small businesses or kind of how that works for you. I find it really interesting how people solve that in different ways. Is that, how do you feel like your stack of services kind of like why does it fit that type of like local business that you're talking about?
Yeah, so what I kind of decided because I don't have a virtual firm, and that's kind of what everybody seems to be doing nowadays. I can work virtually with a lot of my clients, but what I kind of found is my little niche per se is with the local business owners. A lot of those people they still want to meet face to face, which is fine with me. I do some virtual planning with them as well, but they don't have I don't know the they're not as large of companies to work with a whole bunch of people. So what I found is if I can do this suite of services for them, anything that's under my wheelhouse, if they need legal or stuff like that, of course that's not something that I do. But what I found is I can give them more of that advice instead of saying, okay, your bookkeeper's over here doing this piece of the puzzle. You have your finance person, they're managing your 401k and giving you that option. You have, another person who's just doing your tax return. And what I found in experience, the clients that were coming to me is they weren't getting good service. None of the hands were talking to each other. Occasionally you would find that. And really what they needed is somebody that they could talk to. It kind of always started with the tax return because historical services, a lot of small businesses, they had their tax person, whether it was an accountant, an EA, CPA, or just somebody that they knew that would do it. And they didn't know all this other services existed. So I pitched that to some of my clients and started to, branch out from there, doing the tax planning, doing the advisory. And what I found out from a lot of the clients is so much more just by talking to them and having a conversation and what matters to them. They're putting their kid through college. They need to, do this. They're looking to buy a rental property. They're taking care of an elderly family. You never know what their priorities are. And then I'm able to help them with that as well. And then, of course, build upon that and actually give them the services that they need. One of the things that I always tell my clients is you can pay anybody to throw your numbers on a tax return and they can say, hey, see you next year. And what they really need is the planning, the advice, and the questions. And sometimes I've had clients before who have come to me and they've worked with somebody that has, they've said made them feel stupid. They've asked a question and they felt like they should have already known that. And I always tell all my clients, I can't do what you can do. I'm not a plumber. I'm not an electrician. Um, so I can't do what they can do and they can't do what I can do. And it provides a lot of value to them.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I hear that all the time that small business owners kind of they want to centralize the finance and accounting as much as possible, right? Like the fewer people that you need to deal with and the deeper those people are in your personal life or your business, the better, basically, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, and with what I do, I can provide, more service for them. And it helps me out too, because if I'm doing it all year round and helping them, I'm not hearing about stuff after the fact, which was always the
Yeah.
worst case. The client would say, hey, I did this, I did that. And I'm like, oh my God, you shouldn't have done that. Or you could have done it a different way and had a better result or, saved money.
Yes, I remember one time someone came to me and they're like, I took all my money out of my 401k, like buy a rental property or something they were purchasing, and I was like, wait, you did what? Like, I can't help you now. Like, oh no, this is not a
Right.
good
Yeah. If you
situation.
already did it. Yeah. And that's what I tell everyone. I'm like, hey, I don't want to hear that. Hey, I did this. And I'm like, oh my God, you should have done it a different way. Cause after they did it, it's done.
Most of the time, that's exactly right. Yeah, I love it. Talk about in terms of running your firm, like what are the biggest challenges that you see, as like a tax pro today?
Probably regulation, new tax law stuff that comes out. And then I would say a big problem is misinformation and disinformation on social media.
Yeah.
Because I see a lot of my clients, and they're pretty good. They don't act without, telling me stuff, but a lot of stuff that I hear though, hey, I want to do blah, blah, blah. And it's just a bit from a TikTok video, a Facebook reel, you name it. And it may be correct advice. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't, but a lot of times it doesn't apply to them. They're in a different tax bracket, they're in a different situation, they're small business versus big business, and debunking a lot of that just garbage that's out there on social media. Most of the time, that's new clients, I would say, or newer people who haven't worked with a professional. But I get that a lot from people, and then you have to say, okay, that may be a thing, but it doesn't apply to you. Um, and that's something that's really evolved. Geez, I don't know, the past, 5 years or so. I mean, 10 years ago, that wasn't a problem at all. And then you combine that with new regulation, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that came out, which changes and extends a lot of the tax law that we're under right now. And the same thing happened during the pandemic. It wasn't more so when you had TCJA, as far as, a lot of the disinformation online, it's more of a problem now. And then also state changes. I'm actually in Michigan. They had a big change for earned sick time. All employers are now have to offer sick time to their employees, and you're seeing a lot of states around the country who that is going through their legislative process. So for the first time in many, many years, we actually had state compliance changes and telling your clients that okay, yes, you do have to provide sick time. We got to plan for that. We have to budget for that, and work it in for them was a monumental change. And then we're in another period of tax planning as well for this year, with the bill just passed. So I would say those are the biggest things. And even going back into the pandemic, there was, so I remember it must have been 2021. They were making tax changes for the current year that we were filing, because they snuck in some additional stuff at that. So I would definitely the regulation, and just all the information that's out there that everybody has to sort through.
Yeah, how do you deal with that in terms of new tax law changes and just getting the information out to your folks? I'm just curious. I find that to be a really common challenge. How do you deal with that
Yes.
within your practice?
So a lot of that when it comes out, I'll tell my clients I'll usually send an email blast is the kind of the first step, that gets out there. Because with a lot of, like the bill that just passed at any time, hey, the bill passes, then the Treasury Department, the IRS, they have to issue all the regulations that say, hey, here's how we actually apply the law. So I let them know, hey, there is a law change. We may have to look at this for you. And I kind of say if it's urgent or not urgent. And then I also try and do, I don't have a big social media and online presence now, but I'm trying to do more of that with my clients. And then a lot of my small business clients, we are meeting on the quarter end to review their books, and I'm kind of giving them that guidance at that point. And then certain clients who they may be more positioned where they need to act versus others, that may just be, a targeted, an email, phone call. Hey, we need to meet. We probably should look at this for you.
Yep. No, I like that a lot. That's having those regular meetings, I think, is a nice way to open the door to
Mhm.
those conversations, right? Uh,
Yeah, absolutely. And then you find out what they have going on. Because I mean, even current market conditions right now, with tariffs and the economy, different supply change changing as well. I mean, I have work with some coffee shops, and coffee beans went up. I have other people who use steel, and steel went up. And making sure that my clients are on top of those changes, and that if they're impacted by tariffs or price increases or labor shortages, that we're planning for that now. We're getting ahead of that, versus letting price hikes or anything, just drive your business down, and then they get lost in the shuffle, and then all that money goes out the door, and we never want it to be too late to act.
right, exactly. Um, okay, and then talk a little bit about your practice in terms of like how what allows you to like manage your practice? What solutions overall have you found, or like what systems have you been able to put in place that have helped you succeed over the last decade?
So really, and especially within the last couple of years, there's been a lot of great tech that's out there. So for me, myself, and my practice, I am just a solo practitioner. So it is just me. I have a contract bookkeeper. He kind of, works on the back end and stuff. But I would say the number one thing is finding a solid practice management system. I went through a couple. The one that I'm with right now is Canopy. It works well for me, especially because I do tax returns. That was more of an all-in-one solution, and instead of having a bunch of different, a separate document management system, a separate, project management system, that they kind of did it all at once. So it worked for me, and there's a lot of great solutions out there, and that's kind of what I tell everybody. You got to find out what works for you. But they're all great out there. Another one is Ignition, with sending the proposals out. I worked at a firm when this whole idea of getting proposals out, it was a very manual process.
Yep.
And I actually went to it was Scaling New Heights one year, and Ignition was there, and I was like, oh my God, finally, this is everything that we've been wanting to do. And that greatly helps out with automating the billing. So I mean, I don't do any hourly billing. I don't sell people invoices after the fact. Um, they all get a proposal up front, so that way they know what they're getting in for, and they can make that best educated decision for them.
Yep.
And then over on like the tax side, streamlining the intake of documents. So getting your tax organizers out. I found a company last year that I tested out, Stanford Tax. They do a lot of that, gathering the documents, and a very AI intelligent organizer. And I tested that out last tax season. I had a great adoption with it as well, and it really cut down on the time. The same thing, Dave, with your company with Juno. I met you guys a month or so ago at Scaling New Heights, and the same thing. It's going to be able to automate and greatly improve my efficiencies on a lot of that. So when I look at those programs, I always look at to say, hey, how much time is it going to save me, and does it fit in with my current tech stack? Because
Yep.
there are just so many companies that are out there, and they all promise everything under the sun.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And have you had you've been able to implement those in terms of your practice pretty well? It sounds like you're up on some of the newer technology, which means you're probably spending some of your time honestly like adjusting to the change of the new technology, right? As
Mhm.
part of your practice.
Absolutely. Because there is so much great tech that's out there. And I think there's never been a better time to be in accounting or even to be a solo practitioner, because the tech allows you to do that. But at the same time, anytime you are adopting a new tech, it takes some time. You're investing your personal time, you're investing your money, and you got to make sure it works out. And it is new, so when I test out a program, I mean, there's always bumps along the road. I mean, it's expected that that's going to happen. But at the same time, evaluating to make sure that, hey, this is my money that I'm spending on that, and it is doing what I need it to do. Because I had a couple of hiccups on some other programs that I tested out, and not that they were bad programs, but they didn't suit well for me, um, and for what I do. So I try and do a lot of that after tax season, and right in the summertime, right now, and make those decisions so that way, hey, I'm not making those, bumping up the tax season, or worse, making changes during tax season, when
Right.
time is so critical.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and how do you think like as your practice goes forward, what solutions are you kind of hoping to see as you go forward? Like where are some of the unmet needs you feel like still in your kind of like in your firm in terms of either automation or things like that you hope you can kind of evolve into?
So for me in particular, especially on like the tax side of things, is full tax automation. Um, and what that looks like, I'm not really sure at this point, because you have all these big players in the game. You got the Thomson Reuters, the Intuits, these massive tax programs that do what they need to do, but at the same time, for many many years, they weren't innovating. And I would always think, hey, you get these documents. The tax law is written. It's law. It's word and text. And with AI now, to be able to read that, and with these AI vision models that we're seeing, extracting the data and putting it into the tax return, is basically full on automation. You have a program that tells the clients what they need, from that upfront point, gathering all of the information with the organizers, collecting that as a smart organizer and checklist, and then taking those documents and then working in tandem with your tax program. And I
Yep.
think we're finally close about there, um, with that. But that, I always felt, was like the kind of the last leg of it. I feel a lot of the automation that we've seen has been centered around the bookkeeping space, coding transactions and speeding up, like AP and AR. And now we're finally getting that on the tax side. So that's one of the things that I'm most excited to see, is that actual automation of the tax side, because I feel that that's been a long time coming.
Yeah, exactly. It's I always tell people that if you don't do taxes, you don't realize every piece of software kind of looks like it was built 20 years ago,
Yep.
basically. Um,
Yeah, and they're all great. That they do exactly what they need to do, and it's such a mammoth piece of software that I personally use UltraTax in my practice, and I love the software. It does all the calculations. It does everything that I need it to
yeah,
do. But I remember 10 years ago with the Thomson Reuters, they would always tease, "Hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do this," and you see some of these larger companies, and they just kind of they just dangle it in front of you, and
yeah,
maybe it transpires, maybe it doesn't. And now finally, we're able to work with other companies and kind of, get that done.
yep, exactly. I used UltraTax for a while with my firm, and then I acquired a couple different firms and they were using different software, and I ended up switching. And I went back and did a demo this year just to go get it for Juno, and I was laughing because I had been gone for 7 years, and I it looked exactly the same. Like 10 minutes into the demo, I was like, okay, I got it. Yeah, I
Yep, yep.
spent plenty of nights here in this, and it looks exactly like it did. So we're good now. Just like give me the license so I can go use it. But but yeah, that is definitely the pace of change has been slow. And but like you said, it's a trusted piece of software. So I also tell people that like the switching cost is probably the highest of your tax
Mhm.
software because you and I mean, well, let me speak for myself, maybe. I don't even know how to fill out a tax return by hand. I've literally never done it, right? So you're like,
Mhm.
I have to have this piece of software to do this for
Right.
me.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
it's one of those
required.
things in college. They make you fill out the manual form and then you never do it again because the
That's right.
and especially now with all the forms and stuff. I mean, I still have people that'll come to me and they'll be like, "Oh, I just got an EZ form." I'm like, they haven't had an EZ form in almost 10 years. Like they
Yes,
actually
that's
added
right.
on more statements
I
and stuff.
think that's the one I did in college was an easy, and I haven't seen one since. So it's maybe I get close with an SR or something,
Right, right, yeah.
but not one of those forms. You're like, now my returns are hundreds of pages long. So
Right,
doing it by
exactly.
hand
And
would
that's
not be
what
an
we were
option.
yeah, and that's why we need to rely on those, trusted tax softwares that are out there because they're great at that. Because geez, there are so many lines and stuff. And I've heard from other people where they may have, lower end tax software. Um, and that they'll tell me their pain points and stuff. And I'm like, no, you really need that piece of the pie that, okay, you put one number in here, it'll fill out on every form, every schedule statement that you need it.
Yeah,
And you have that trust that it is going to be able to do that. And that
yeah,
is critical.
no doubt about that. Yeah, and so then doing tax, talk a little bit about work-life balance and kind of how you make that work with the seasonality of tax in particular.
Mhm.
Yeah, how's that kind of work for you in your practice?
So it's been going. This upcoming year will probably be a little bit of an evolution because I've grown and I got more clients than I have. But a lot of what I try and do is really spread that work out so that way the clients, I'm maybe testing with the scheduling software this upcoming tax season. I've heard some people online that have used that. Um, because sometimes all the work comes in at once and you can't really can control that too much. But what I always try and do, I plan for tax season to say, hey, here's the amount of work that I have. Here's how many hours that I want to work. The good news is last tax season, I don't know, I probably capped out at, maybe 50 hours. I definitely didn't work over 60 hours. When I worked for a previous firm, that was about the norm. Everybody was cranking the work out. And I wasn't working those long hours until probably later in March, and going into April. But most of that was, 40 hours, sometimes less. And that was something that was critical to me because burnout is a real thing and it happens to everybody. And you're just sitting there cranking out tax returns, burning the midnight oil.
Yep.
And it's hard. And then you need so much time after tax season just to get back into normal life and take a deep breath.
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, for the scheduling piece too, it'd be interesting to see if that's where people go in the future. It does sound nice. I wonder if my people would send in their documents on time on whatever
Yep.
day it might be that we picked out, right? I'm sure most of them would probably send me like half of them and say, "Okay, I'm done." And you're like,
Mhm.
"Nope, nope, as usual."
And that's always been the biggest struggle because I say, it's great that we live in a day and age that there is all this technology and stuff, but we still have to get client adoption. The clients have
Right.
to use it at the end of the day. And, training and educating them that, hey, this is a better piece of software and it's a better use of everybody's time instead of me sending another email. I need this document. I need this document. And then another email and then a text and a call. And there's so much wasted time
Yeah.
when that happens.
Yeah. How do you bring the clients along on that? Just out of curiosity, any good tips?
So I've had I when I like last year I started using Stanford Tax and I kind of told my
Yeah.
clients and I said, hey, this is going to be a great improvement upon that because they were used to at least the firm that I worked at, they just get, heck, a lot of them got a paper organizer in the mail because it was an old firm that I worked for. And I told them, I said, hey, this is going to be a great piece. It is a little bit of a change, but I think it's going to be very, very beneficial. Um, and I had a lot of great feedback from my clients that it worked out better. And it doesn't seem like that I'm operating in the Stone Age, that they had the same thing that they've had for, 20 years. Um, and it has great adoption. The same thing too, it'll send out auto reminders to clients when they haven't finished it. So that way we have the bots that are just sitting there bothering the clients as well. And then outside of that too, some I will have automated client requests that will send out as well through my practice management system. I think most of them do that now, where hey, I
Yep.
need this list of documents and it will just constantly bug them. Um until they supply it. Versus before, that used to always be an email, an email, an
Yeah.
email, an email, and on the 10th email, maybe they'll maybe they'll give it to you.
Yeah, that's right. Those minimizing those like touch points that are especially just reminders. And it's I tell my team we've let go of some of those clients over the years that just ignore those emails. And I'm like, what do we email this person like 25 times this
Yeah,
year for the same? I'm like, we're just not going to do this anymore. Like if you had someone you were coworker or something that you worked with that responded to 1 out of 25 emails, you probably wouldn't keep them on the team either. It's like we got to just move on here.
right.
Yeah, no, that's definitely dealt with that one before as well. Yeah, and then so yeah, how those like pieces work together for you? Because you've got Canopy and Stanford and now Juno. Like talk a little bit about how you're making sure that those systems are working, that like information's moving across. Like how do you kind of deal with that at a high level?
So I always make sure that it's central around my practice management system because that's kind of like the heartbeat, that. And I mean, I don't run my practice out of QuickBooks, but the two of those is really
Yep.
what is the core of it. So I always rely on everything in the practice management first, running the tasks. I even put sometimes my internal tasks, not even just client work in there, so that way I know that it's working. And a lot of times when you have a new software, it is figuring out that process. Because when I added on Stanford last year, it was making sure, okay, when is the email going to come to me that makes sure, okay, the client did it, and then it's informing me that it's done.
Right.
I had a couple of hiccups where the clients thought they did it and it wasn't, and it was just kind of sitting in limbo land, and I'm like, I wasn't notified. Um, and I kind of worked out those kinks. And I feel a lot of that is just testing on the back end. Like I said, now in the summertime, it's the perfect. We're doing extensions. We're getting that workout right now and making sure that it is pairing with it because the technology is ever evolving. So I am relying on Canopy to house all that. I still use them for my document management and making sure everything goes into there and then building out the procedures in there for my project management. So, okay, I did this step, I did this step, I did this step. Um, Starting out in the beginning, I feel that that's the most crucial aspect to it. And as it evolves, sometimes I add an additional checklist items that are in there. Okay, I found out this hiccup. I found out this in my workflow process that needs to get added, and making sure myself that I'm diligent at doing that.
Yeah. And it's interesting because as a doing most of the work yourself. You were saying I'm a part-time bookkeeper, but on the tax side, it sounds like you're doing end to end, right? Like all these
Mhm.
projects. It's interesting that you still have to put as much time as you do into the processes, right? And like even I'm thinking the templates, like my firm has used Carbon and Taxstone, not Canopy, but I would assume it's very similar in terms of like,
Mhm.
a project has different steps and all the different
Yeah.
things, right? One way or another. And it's really interesting because I wonder if I would be diligent enough to set those up if I didn't have team members that I had to coordinate with. But it sounds
Right.
like you're finding value in doing that anyways, because I mean, just like everybody else, right? It's like when there's 20 things, you got to figure out what's ready to work on. It probably is still helpful to have those set up.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I found, because it is just me working on it, I'm trying to get all that information out of my brain and document it somewhere.
Yeah.
Because when you are in tax season, stuff gets lost in the shuffle. And just me looking further down the road, if I do want to expand, and add on an accountant or an EA or somebody else to help out or a virtual admin, so that way that stuff is documented and I'm not trying to pick up all the pieces of the puzzle later or
Yeah.
have a whole bunch of sticky notes laying around or do that.
Yeah.
And that was one of my goals for 2025 was to make sure that I am standardizing my processes, even though that I am a solo, that it is documented what I do and why I do it. So,
Right.
worst case if something ever happened to me, so somebody else could jump right in, or if I add another team member, it's already built out and ready for them.
Yep, exactly. Have you used anything in terms of automation on the business side of things for those business returns? I'm just thinking with work papers and some of like data entry. I don't know if you use QuickBooks Connect in terms of pushing data. Actually, I don't even know if they push into older tax, but any automation on that side of things?
So the business ones are not as much,
Yeah.
and not as much right now because what I have historically been using is, I don't know, 90%. If my clients use a software for their books, it's primarily QuickBooks, and 95% are in
Yep.
QuickBooks. So a lot of in QuickBooks Online, I don't do with desktop at all anymore,
Yep.
which is good. So a lot of that is gathering the information out of there. I have used Thomson Reuters. They have their own work paper product, or accounting CS. They call it. It's one and the same program.
Yep.
So I primarily use that as far as just getting the import feature into UltraTax. And I really use that because I had the muscle memory in my previous firm. I don't know if it's the right solution or what I need to do. It works for me right now, but there hasn't been a whole lot of automation on that because with the business clients, it has historic. I hate to say hand holding, but
Yeah.
it's more of a touch point with them.
Yeah.
Saying, hey, what goes on? I mean, I have the standard stuff that I need from everybody after, bank statements, loan statements, all regular source documents from them. Um,
Yep.
and they typically know stuff like that to bring to me. But that's an area that I definitely want to automate further. And I think, QuickBooks is getting a lot of that. They're releasing their AI agents. I don't know that I can depend on Thomson Reuters updating their programs, but it at least worked for me in the moment and worked with my muscle memory that I had as far as getting those returns out.
Yeah, it's different with businesses, right? Like it's
Mhm.
with individuals, it's more of a template structure. Like last year's documents are probably gonna be this year's documents. With businesses, even the organizers, just I find a little bit more custom.
Yeah, and I found that out too because they have business organizers out there, but then sometimes I felt like, I don't know, it didn't ask the right questions or it asked too many questions.
Yeah,
Individuals,
yeah,
I think we can standardize that, and
yeah.
thankfully we have, but um each business is so unique, and a lot of that, sometimes as I'm if I don't work with them throughout the year and I'm just doing a tax return for them, a lot of the questions naturally come up as I'm working through it.
Right. So they've
So a lot
already
of
been answered.
Yeah, yeah. So a
Yeah.
lot of times I'll take their work, I'll do the first pass, outside of the normal stuff that they need to give me. Then it's like, okay, oh, you bought this, oh, you did this, you did this, and the questions kind of come up almost while I'm working on it.
No, exactly. More back and forth and
Yeah.
different times you're collecting information, things like that. Yeah, that's perfect. So then, and I know we're getting a little bit close to time here. What's your practice look like in 5 years, or out in the future a little bit, but not so far you can't tell what that looks like? Like, where are you kind of hoping to take that over time, and what does that really look like in a few years for you in terms of your practice and your clients?
That's a very interesting question, and I'm doing some soul searching this year for it.
Yep.
And why I say that is because the technology and everything is there where I could be a solo practitioner and have a lifestyle business and not work as much on the business and still make the amount of money that I need. At the same time, demand is just huge in the accounting industry and to find good qualified technical people. So when I look at 5 years, I'll probably end up hiring somebody. Maybe one or two people is what it would look like. I don't want a huge operation or a huge firm on that. I do want to stay, more local and have more of a touch point on that. But that's one of the big questions that I want to answer to myself because I'm kind of at that capacity. It's like, hey, should I grow? Or should I, be more niche and have, more of a local client base and a smaller client base?
Yep, exactly. No, that's right. And is that being at capacity then? Are you kind of slowing down growth until then? Like I always am curious for smaller firms. Uh, I bought a firm initially, so I kind of started with like a critical mass of folks. So it was a little different in terms of like, okay, people can flex a little bit more if you've got multiple people, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, let's add like a fifth person or a sixth person, right? It's more incremental versus an individual where you're like, okay, I'm really busy and I don't like I'm either going to hire another person. I have twice as much capacity all of a sudden,
Mhm.
or I wait and just try to work extra hard myself when there are those moments where I'm trying to, do more work. Um, how do you think about that in terms of if you are to jump like down that path? How do you kind of manage that? And do you try to build up more clients first and kill yourself and then hire somebody, or how do you think it'll go for you?
I think I would probably hire somebody first because I'm at
Yeah,
that point now. I've heard horror stories, not even just accounting, just in general. If you wait to hire, then you're just playing catch up at that point.
yeah,
And I know right now, I mean, I don't market at all. It's just natural referrals that are coming through. And at some points, it is still more demand than I need at that, and really what I'm doing is increasing my prices for a lot of that stuff. And I think, that's the nature in the industry for so long. Nobody has charged what we need to charge.
Right.
And leaving that as a barrier up front because yeah, if your price point's too low, I do great work and everybody wants it. Um,
Yeah, that's right. It's funny. Yeah, that is a big piece, and I'm in the Bay Area, so I will say first and foremost that that is a weird bubble in the world where you can charge different rates than. And I lived in Indiana for a lot of years, so I know the Midwest well, very close to Michigan. And I think very similar kind of mindset, like Midwest hardworking, folks that do real things and not necessarily tech jobs, but.
mm,
I do hear that all the time where people tell me kind of what their average, individual return costs. And I'm like, wow, I don't know how you make that work because even at $1,000 a return, I'm still like struggling to find good people and things like that. And yeah, I see that all the time. The one thing I think is really curious is for clients, because I did raise my prices really significantly, probably tripled them over like a 5-year period. Um, and look, that was a headache for sure at times, and we did frustrate some clients in doing that. But I was amazed how many of them did not. They're mad the first year, and then they just kind of move on with life, right? And if they were frustrated, I would just say to them like, "Well, based on what?" You know what I mean? They're like, "Well, you can't charge me that," and I'm like, Why can't I?" You know what I mean? Like they would very rarely have any sort of comparison point other than what I charged them last year. That was their only point of comparison. And I'm like, listen, we like lost money on some of our returns last year. Like that's insane. I can't keep doing that as a business, or I will not survive, and you will have to find a new accountant. So,
right.
instead, I'm going to raise my prices, and you might find a new accountant. So we're just going to take that risk together. I'd love to keep working with you, but like this is your new price. And anyways, I always thought it was funny after you get past that initial surge of frustration. It's kind of like, okay, well, like, what do you think the price should be? And I don't know, they'd be like, well, I heard my friend pays X.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, well, your friend probably has a different tax return than you do. But anyways, I always thought that was pretty funny over time. The clients were not as, I mean, no one wants to pay more for anything in life, right? I fully understand that. But I actually found there was less resistance than I anticipated to raising those prices. Um, and like you said, you've only got so much of your time. So at the end of the day, you gotta go make sure you're getting compensated well enough to do a good job for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, it just comes down to supply and demand. And
Yeah.
we're at that inflection point where you have people that have been in the industry for a lot of people since the 1980s, right?
Yep.
All the baby
Yep.
boomers and they're retiring and we have a lack of a pipeline that's going into accounting.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but then we also have great technology that's out there. So it's a very unique time, I would say, in the accounting industry as a whole, whether you're doing bookkeeping, accounting, tax and audit work,
Yep.
that we are in that big shift. And I mean, geez, even when I started, like 10 years ago and, learning stuff in college and stuff, it's drastically different than it has then because the
Yeah.
technology's just exploded.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is for the betterment of us, which is great.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, that's exactly right. It really has improved, and I think you got to give credit. I think particularly like practice management is like you said.
Mm,
I think earlier, I forget if you said the foundation or the
yeah.
backbone or whatever, but it is. You got to kind of start there, so your processes live somewhere, and then your documents live somewhere, and then from there you have a foundation to do a lot more things. Um, Once you've got everything kind of organized and structured, and I think that's why some of the interesting tax automation stuff is just now coming around because that wasn't true until just a few years ago for most
Yep.
firms. You even go back like 5 years and Axdome and Carbon and Canopy were like barely even existed basically. And like no one was really using them in terms of small and mid-sized firms. And I don't know for you, but for me, the first time I wrote a big check for practice management software, I was like, oh man, what am I doing? Like
Yeah.
this better pay off. This is seriously expensive. And now I can't even imagine doing the business, without it. It's like, okay, well, that's the easiest check. It's still a big check, but it's an
Yeah.
easier check for me to
It
write
makes it a
knowing the
little bit
value.
easier.
That's
Yeah,
right.
the
That's right.
values out there, and they are
Yeah.
improving it. And a lot of them they are taking the user suggestions, and that's why it's such a great time because we're finally getting what we always envisioned for all of this
Yeah.
stuff. And it's great, and they are listening to us as the accountants, bookkeepers, EACPAs. They're listening to us and improving the products. Or even like yourself, you have people who left the industry to create these softwares because they knew there was a problem and they knew
Yeah.
there was a better way to do it.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. I left. Well, I mean, I still have my practice, but Yeah, I was kind of like, man, someone needs to solve this problem for a few years before I finally was like, okay, no one's solving the problem. I'm going to go solve
I'll
the
do
problem.
it.
Like somebody, I literally don't want to do this, but someone has to. I always looked at bookkeeping and I'm like, we could do with tax what we've done with bookkeeping. And bookkeeping is something like 80 to 90% automated, depending on what you're doing with like AP and AR in particular. And I was thinking like, man, tax should be this way too. Like, why am I ever typing in a number from box 10 on a W-2 into some piece of software? It's always the
Yeah.
same exact mapping. Like this is what computers do. And or why am I training some staff member to like deal with an exceptional number on a 1099 or something, whatever it might be. Um, this is what a computer should be doing right now. And then when I couldn't find people, I finally was like, okay, I'm firing some of my clients. I'm just going to keep the high price clients and I'm going to like put this on incubation mode and go try to actually solve this problem. So yeah, it's funny you say that. But yeah, no, I appreciate you taking the time. And I know, Aman, I don't know if there's anything you want to say at the end here, but I know we're at time. But I really do appreciate, Paul, your time. And it's going to be really fun to have you on Juno as well. It'll be really exciting to hear what your thoughts are. Like we always want to hear feedback. Anything we improve for you is going to improve for everybody. Um, so definitely, let us know what you think of the product as you start to get up and use it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to be on board. Like I said, a lot of these tech changes finally for the tax side.
Yeah.
I'm really excited and I like what you guys have to offer. So looking forward
I
to it.
think my people have used it for two tax seasons now. We're the only, like we're the only ones that I would have subjected to our product as of last year, uh, as for a firm. But yeah, I mean, it's someone I love what one of my staff members said the other day, which is like, I'm never going back. She's like, I would
Mhm.
literally never work for a firm that doesn't do that. Like, I'm not going back
Yeah.
to like typing in all the numbers by hand. Like, that's insane. I can't believe I did that for most of my career. And I'm hoping everyone has that moment where you're just like, man, it's funny. You also kind of alluded to this a little bit with AI. I tell people too, there are going to be human touch points. There's this misnomer that AI is just going to like start doing returns, and that's not true. It's not going to be true anytime. So, like, I don't even know even a decade from now if that's going to be true. Even with the billions and billions of dollars they're pouring into it, it's not 100% accurate, and they don't need to be because in most of the things in the world you don't require that level of accuracy. So it can be amazing at like writing emails and marketing materials and analyzing markets and blah blah blah, like all these different things that where 99% accuracy is sufficient. But in the tax world, if you had 99% efficiency, you'd have a mistake on like almost every return. Like most of them have 100 pieces of data or more. And so I'm always like, guys, it's not, I don't see a time. We would have just built this for consumers if I thought I could just do tax returns. So,
Right,
you know,
right, exactly. Yeah, and that was the thing because I remember I think it was like last year Intuit had their breakup with your tax professional commercial and
yeah,
stuff, and all the industry was all in an uproar, for multiple reasons and stuff. But I remember this one person was like, "Well, those probably aren't the clients who you're targeting anyways.
yeah, that's
If they
right.
could just do their tax return, we do more of the planning and more of the complex returns, and that's as a profession,
Exactly. Which is
that's
already what we kind of do, right? I mean, that's the typical person I talk to, like you with small business owners. It's like, hey, that's complicated, And look, if you forget one, like I don't know, your cell phone this year or something, like you forget one number, I have already made your money back that you paid me. You know what I mean? It's just
yep,
like if I could go find that one thing, then guess what? Like, or I can tell you how to optimize your salary for QBI. Like, I have
right,
literally just paid myself off just right there. And like every year it's worth paying me, $1,000, couple $1,000, because if you make a decent amount of money and you run your own business, you're complex enough. And at the end of the day, like what you're paying versus what your taxes cost is not a crazy transaction, fee basically. And the savings will be there if as long as you can actually spend the time with the clients to understand the context and find something, productive for them each year, basically.
right. And that's what I tell everybody too, because I've had people. I mean, I don't. I'll still get calls for basic tax returns and stuff because they just Google and they just call a number,
Yeah.
and then they're always shouting, "You charge what?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I work with for a specific clientele. You're probably better off using TurboTax."
Yeah.
And I have no problem telling people that. I'm like, "Well, you kind of evolve, and especially if you are a first time." self-employed person, it's like, oh, your needs evolve over time.
Yep.
And you might not need a whole lot of stuff up front, or there might not be a lot to do. But in a couple of years, when you are able to pull some different levers and actually save some money and implement tax strategies, yeah, the couple $1,000s that you're paying to, some person for tax advice, ain't nothing, because you're
Yeah.
saving all that typically every single year on your
Yeah,
taxes.
exactly. Oh, at least, yeah. That's actually one thing you can do, by the way, in Juno, just to, if you've got people that are S corps, especially like how much they saved this year by being an S corp. I
Uh-huh.
always tell my team, like in a perfect world, you'd send that every single year, remind them the benefit of that overall structure if you put that together. And anyways, you can just put that in Juno as a prompt, and then it will, remind them. Because I've had a few clients, not all of them, but a few clients that are like, why am I paying you like
Yep.
$4,000 and I used to pay you like one? Like, what's going on here? And I actually did it manually for a couple clients that were, kind of griping about it. And then when we first started putting together, the advisor for Juno, I was like, hey, can you make it do this? Like, let's make it do this and do it accurately so that we can send this out, because there is extra overhead, and I'm sensitive to that in a small business. Like, I hate too that it would cost $4,000 a year to do taxes. I'm talking personal and the business, but and I'm like, I want to be able to just tell them like, hey, yeah, it costs four, but you saved like eight this year. You know what I mean? Or like
Right.
whatever the numbers are. It's like, because I would never have someone do it if we weren't going to save more than their fees, obviously.
Absolutely.
But
And it's
anyways,
important that they
that's one of
remember
the things I
that.
love. Yeah,
Because
exactly.
people often forget that, oh, I forgot, I mean, I've worked at a firm before, and you lose clients like that because, like, oh, well, what are you doing for me lately?
Right.
And it wasn't like, okay, well, yeah, all that stuff that we did 5 years ago set you in stone. You'd be paying so much more money right now. And
That's right. Yeah,
just
we're
as
saving you
humans,
15
we
grand a
forget
year
that.
times 5 years. We saved you 75 grand, basically.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, yeah,
That's what I
not
did.
fun
I
to
said
pay
that,
us, but
like,
it is what it is. I love it. Well, no, I really appreciate the time and sharing with us. And it's really cool what you've done with your practice. I mean, obviously, you're willing to invest in technology, which I think is probably going to help you a lot in the long run.
yeah.
And is something that, especially smaller firms, you don't always see, because it is a lot to manage, even like the different pieces of technology across your
Mhm.
practice. But good for you. And I'm sure, that'll pay off over time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the plan.
Exactly. I love it. Well, great to meet you and spend some time with you. And if I can ever be useful too, as you're coming up to speed on Juno, just let me know.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Dave. And let's go out there and be modern tax pros and be the winners and save our clients some money.